morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today another detailed forecast update coming your way. We're going to be talking about severe thunderstorms and a lot of storms just in general expected across the southeast of Queensland and into the northeast of New South Wales. Showers and storms also expected across the tropics, and we'll focus in on far north Queensland as well, and a heatwave expected to extend across Western Australia and into the Northern Territory and parts of South Australia later on this coming week. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated. So heading down into south central Queensland, where we have had a front move through overnight and provide some pretty significant rainfall totals outside of Taroomani in June. The highest rainfall accumulations overnight were up to 70 millimetres of much needed rainfall across parts of central Queensland, and I'm also pleased to report that a lot of places that have recently missed out on rainfall from thunderstorms and those severe thunderstorm outbreak that we saw last week actually did pick up rainfall accumulations between the 10 and 30 millimetre mark, so very good accumulations indeed. And the rainfall didn't stop in central Queensland either. It headed further north up towards Cloncurry and Mount Isa, where peak accumulations overnight were up to 150 millimetres on some outback cattle stations up there. So very good rainfall accumulations across the board, across parts of Queensland. Very healthy accumulations, and very glad to see that they did receive this type of rainfall as well, because it was a steady sort of precipitation that they did desperately need, as opposed to the torrential downpours from those thunderstorms. But those torrential downpours were still spread out across the northern parts of Queensland up towards Mount Isa and Cloncurry, as just mentioned. Now let's take a look at the forecast. There's a lot of interesting stuff to break down with the forecast in this update, so we're going to get stuck straight into things now with the rain forecast. You can see there's still a couple of showers around the Chinchilla, Toowoomba and Kingaroy sort of area, extending into the Brisbane area. Just a few light drops expected there. Brisbane actually did receive 5 millimetres overnight, which was substantially more than what I did expect for them, but again, 5 millimetres is a drop in the ocean for Brisbane, and many other suburbs didn't really pick up any rainfall at all. Thunderstorms are expected to fire up in the wake of this system throughout the afternoon hours, specifically from about 1 or 2 p.m. onwards outside of Chinchilla, and then another area of thunderstorms expected to develop south of Ralston and in June. Those thunderstorms are potentially going to be severe, especially the ones outside of Chinchilla, which you can see here. Chinchilla and Miles expecting an outbreak of potentially severe thunderstorms by around 3 or 4 p.m. local time. These thunderstorms here are going to be quite isolated and also expected to be pretty slow moving in the grand scheme of things. There's going to be nothing moving around these thunderstorms, so the risk of heavy rainfall is exacerbated because of that reason. There's also the risk of large hailstones outside of Chinchilla, and also the risk of damaging winds associated with these severe thunderstorms. Outside of Injune, the risk seems to be more sort of damaging winds and heavy rainfall. I don't think the large hailstone threat is going to be there, just having a look at this forecast here. And if we do flip it over to the Access G3 forecast, which is the convective forecast model that we have access to in the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model, you can see the risk of severe thunderstorms not really that high. I'm not seeing any really standout areas on this weather map here in terms of massive precipitation values. There is a little pocket here outside of Injune that's obviously hard to miss, but it isn't really that extreme. So I think the risk of severe thunderstorms tonight is going to be quite minimal, and if they do fire up, they're going to be few and far between, and most likely outside of Miles and Chinchilla. But in terms of widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak, we can pretty much write that risk off. Later on tonight, however, we will see a line of thunderstorms, and most likely pulse thunderstorms, head up towards Ralston, Emerald, Dingo and Claremont, and a few showers and storms also expected to extend across the Sunshine Coast later on tonight. Showers and storms also possible outside of Stanthorpe and Warwick, however they're not likely to make it as far north as Toowoomba and some of the more western suburbs of Brisbane. I reckon Brisbane and the Gold Coast should remain shower and storm free after around 2 or 3 p.m. today. There's really nothing in the way of rainfall after those times just mentioned. Tomorrow we're not really talking about the risk of storms. There will be the slight risk of showers and storms extending up the central coastline of Queensland. Rockhampton and Agnes Water are two locations that do stick out as a risk of showers and thunderstorms, but when I say a risk, I'm really talking about a very small chance at this time. We're not expecting anything major up there. Same deal for Wednesday. A couple of showers are possible along the Queensland coastline, but in terms of thunderstorms, they should be very few and far between, and definitely non-severe storms look to be certain at this time. Thursday we will see another brief outbreak of thunderstorms. However, again, severe thunderstorms look really unlikely. Outside of Ralston and Dingo, there could be a couple of thunderstorms that do potentially go severe warned, but again, the chances of that are really low. And then later on in the afternoon and evening by around 8 or 9 p.m. local time, and a little bit later than that, these thunderstorms will upscale into what will be a pretty shattered squall line heading for the central Queensland coastline and impacting areas such as Rockhampton, Gladstone and Bundaberg, with some light showers and potentially a couple of bolts of lightning by Thursday evening into very early Friday morning. Some showers and storms also possible across the northern suburbs of Brisbane and into the Sunshine Coast by Thursday afternoon as well. But again, the forecast for this thunderstorm outbreak on Thursday looks to be dominated by non-severe thunderstorms, and it's also pretty uncertain at that. Now, Friday we did talk about yesterday as being a day for potentially severe thunderstorms across the southeast of Queensland. However, I feel like I've said that a lot this video, so I'm just going to say that Friday and Saturday look to be the highest chance that we do see severe thunderstorms over the next 2 weeks. You can see an outbreak of thunderstorms expected along the foothills and the hills outside of Brisbane and Mount Tamborine, extending inland towards Toowoomba and Kingaroy, and impacting communities such as Gympie and up towards Harvey Bay and the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast. But in terms of severe thunderstorms, it's possible, but it's not really awfully likely at this time, and certainly something we're going to need to revisit later on this week to give a more detailed forecast on. This just looks like a stock standard afternoon thunderstorm outbreak for the southeast of Queensland. Certainly nothing to write home about, and certainly nothing to get worried about at this time. Again, Saturday, a stock standard thunderstorm blow up is expected more into central parts of Queensland outside of Taroom and Injune, Rolleston, and the typical areas for these thunderstorms at this time of the year. But again, the conditions just don't look to be there this week for severe thunderstorms. There will be days where severe thunderstorms are possible. As mentioned, Friday and also tonight there is severe thunderstorms possible, but the conditions just don't look conducive enough for a widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak. Like I said, there's a chance of severe thunderstorms here and there across southeastern Queensland this week, but the risk of all-out mayhem in terms of stormy weather doesn't look possible at this time. And that's just because we don't have enough energy in the atmosphere for these thunderstorms to make the most of. This afternoon, there will be reasonably high values of convective available potential energy, especially around Roma and Injune, where the severe thunderstorms look to be most likely. But in terms of the remainder of this week, the values remain pretty small for this time of the year. They're around the average along the Sunshine Coast, and as such, that's why there is a risk of thunderstorms on Tuesday and Wednesday, but the risk does remain very low just because of these low values. And then on Thursday, we do get another jump in the convective available potential energy values along the Sunshine Coast, and hence why there is a thunderstorm outbreak expected on Thursday and Friday into the southeast of Queensland. So very interesting stuff once you put this entire picture together. It is a complicated forecast, but can be wrapped up pretty simply. As we have just said, the risk of those severe thunderstorms doesn't really look to be there, except for tonight and also into Friday afternoon and evening. But the risk of thunderstorms does look to be possible on Monday, Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday this week. Looking more long range as well, the forecast is very uncertain beyond around Sunday. We will take a closer look at a potentially severe thunderstorm outbreak on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, but we'll talk about that more so this weekend. The forecast is still just very murky for that, so there's no point really talking about it and getting our hopes up for thunderstorms when they aren't entirely possible at this time. But yeah, that basically does it for the southeast of Queensland. There's not an awful lot to talk about across the remainder of Queensland. However, the far north is something that I did want to mention as well. We do have some decent rainfall accumulations possible over the next 10 days. Now, keep in mind, September and October, typically the dry season for these pockets of far north Queensland, but you can see some decent falls are now starting to come onto the radar. They were especially there yesterday, but have since been backed off in the latest reiterations of the forecast models. But you can see between forecast models, we are expecting those showers to be pretty consistent along the Lockhart River and Moomba coastline up and towards the extreme far north of Queensland, and some good rainfall was reported there overnight as well, up towards 25 millimetres just from showers streaming ashore. The Daintree rainforest as well, expecting a good couple of drops of rainfall. Again, still a drop in the ocean compared to what they can receive, but for this time of the year, we're definitely starting to see a more build-up, or a much more bigger build-up in terms of rainfall for the far north of Queensland, which is good to see because I know a lot of people are really holding out for some rainfall at this time, because some pockets of far north Queensland are starting to enter drought-like conditions. It's only minor to mild drought-like conditions at this time, and it's totally normal for this time of the year. But again, some rainfall would be very welcome for pockets of far north Queensland, especially along the Cassowary Coast by the looks of things by next week. Rainfall is going to be much below average, or soil moisture values rather, is going to be much below average for areas outside of Innisfail and Tully. So some rainfall there will be very, very welcome indeed. And keeping things tropical, we might as well take a look at the tropical weather forecast for the Northern Territory and parts of Western Australia. We did talk about a thunderstorm outbreak last night, and that did happen. Some good thunderstorms were reported across parts of Western Australia and into the Northern Territory, and some good rainfall as well for some locations. I believe areas outside of Elquestra and Old Mornington Homestead received accumulations up towards 40 or 50 millimetres. Pretty decent for this time of the year, nothing crazy. However, some more thunderstorms are expected this coming Thursday. We are expecting a bit of an outbreak of thunderstorms across parts parts of the Northern Territory, especially around Darwin, expecting a good line of thunderstorms by Thursday afternoon and evening. Just with these hot temperatures, we're expecting a lot of convective energy in the atmosphere to really take these thunderstorms to the next level. Also, Thursday night into early Friday morning, a couple of severe thunderstorms are possible across parts of the Northern Territory, just from a line of squalls expected to move across between Darwin and Jabiru. Some thunderstorms possible there, which, as I said, could go severe. And then Friday afternoon and evening as well, a couple more storms expected across parts of the Northern Territory. Again, this is stock standard stuff for this time of the year, absolutely nothing to be concerned about, very typical weather, but it just goes to show how just 2 weeks ago we were talking about nothing in the way of thunderstorms across the Northern Territory, and now we're starting to see them blow up pretty much every single night, which means that wet season is very, very close to breaking for real when we start to see those big rainfall accumulations pile on. And if we flick it over to the Axis G3 model, which can be notoriously unreliable, and I'm not saying that this is a good forecast from the Axis G3, but you can see that across much of the Northern Territory, some good rainfall is beginning to pile on over the next 10 days, especially outside of Catherine from thunderstorms just traversing that area. Accumulations up towards 130 or 140 millimeters are possible over the next 10 days, but I will take the majority of the rainfall in the Northern Territory on this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt, considering other forecast models do not support it or tolerate that forecast one bit whatsoever. And another section that I would also like to talk about is Western Australia. Some good storms also firing up across the Kimberley region. Like I said, typical for this time of the year, but those storms really are starting to pile on the rainfall up there. And it's been a really good start to the wet season for areas, especially between Derby and up towards Columbaroo. The rainfall has been very good for this time of the year. And that was expected with that early monsoonal onset. The early rainfall onset, rather, it was completely expected by the forecast models. But if the wet season does continue to play out, especially over the next couple of months, like it has been playing out, we're in for a lot of rainfall across parts of WA, the NT, and then into far north Queensland, which will be fantastic to see. They really hang out for this wet season rainfall, and they do love it up there. And it doesn't look like it's going to be significant enough to cause huge flooding problems this year, but over the next couple of months, we will wait and see. But just to keep things short and sweet, some good rainfall is expected over the coming couple of months, especially if the rainfall keeps up how it has been keeping up over the last couple of weeks. And just before I wrap things up here, I would like to talk about the heat wave that is extending across Western Australia. We do have some warm temperatures still on that forecast. Like I said yesterday, the Perth forecast has been back down substantially. It is going to be warm today, up towards 31 degrees, so a very pleasant day across Perth. But unfortunately, it looks like that heat is going to be kind of as warm as it gets over the next couple of days. However, compared to a couple of days ago, where we were expecting Wednesday and Thursday to tickle 40 degrees Celsius, it looks like the temperatures are just going to remain into the low 30s, which for the most part I think is a good thing. Perth, very typical for a lot of people to really want this warm weather, and then after 1 week of near 40 degree temperatures, we're just begging for winter to return again. So the warm temperatures, it is probably a good thing that they do wait, but I imagine a lot of people were really waiting for this 40 degree heat so they could get to the beach and really enjoy the warm weather and the warm Perth summer, but we're going to have to wait another couple of weeks for that. The West Coast trough just not as strong as expected, and that was what was going to be bringing us those warm temperatures, and as such a sea breeze has came in on the forecast to replace that West Coast trough, which has headed a lot further inland, which means inland communities, especially into the wheat belt, the northern wheat belt especially, we're expecting some very warm temperatures there up towards 14 degrees Celsius above average, where daytime temperatures on Wednesday and Thursday could tickle 40 degrees Celsius. However, on Friday, with temperatures expected to go into the high 30s and early 40s into parts of the eastern wheat belt and the goldfields, that is going to be a lot warmer than average, especially for these locations at this time of the year. Along the south coast as well, Esperance could receive a very warm day up towards 35 degrees Celsius if this heat fully does come into fruition. This low pressure system here, which is what was driving that west coast trough before it completely fragments off, as usual after a couple of days, breaks apart and then moves further east. Throughout Friday is going to bring those very warm temperatures into the goldfields and then into the south interior for Saturday. Just take a look at this. Massive temperatures expected across parts of the south interior and the Euclid districts, extending into parts of the Northern Territory and South Australia as a weak cold front brushes through the southwest of Western Australia on Friday afternoon and evening, bringing those temperatures down for the southwest corner, but bringing those temperatures up for the southeastern corner of the state. Thankfully, a very remote part of Western Australia, because I don't think there's a lot of people that want to experience 44 degree heat at this time of the year just yet. It is going to be very warm, however, across northern parts of Western Australia. Typical for this time of the year, but outside of Marble Bar and Telfer, temperatures are going to be going into the high 40s for the first time this summer, with temperatures up towards 46 or 47 degrees expected for the first week of November. Like I said, typical for this time of the year, but still substantially warmer than average for some of these locations, and it's not really heat that they want to experience at this time of the year yet. A lot of people up in the northern Pilbara region would like to wait until later November to receive this type of heat. I've seen it in the comment section as well. A lot of people just not looking forward to this really hot heat that they're about to receive into the early parts of next week. But yeah, high 40s for the first time this summer. It's going to get very warm across parts of Western Australia, and this hot weather also expected to extend into parts of the Northern Territory and South Australia, and it looks like Australia might actually become a bit of a convective bubble bath by the end of next week. A lot of instability next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 5th and 6th of November respectively, and that looks like it's going to bring a thunderstorm outbreak, dare I say, later on next week, maybe around the 7th, 8th or 9th of November into the next fortnight's weekend across parts of Queensland into New South Wales. But that's looking really long range, and that's making quite a lot of guesses and assumptions just based off this forecast here, with a lot of heat, a lot of instability, and a lot of low pressure and troughs extending across central parts of Australia, which will just head further east as time goes on. We will keep a very close eye on things though, because it looks like this is going to become a very interesting part of the forecast. Certainly something that we want to be talking about sometime next week, and I'll be able to give you an answer on about this potential thunderstorm outbreak that we've just talked about, looking very long range, hopefully by next weekend. But again, we will just have to wait and see. If I've left any questions unanswered for you, especially if you live in the northeast of New South Wales and into the southeast of Queensland, staring down thunderstorm outbreaks tonight into the later parts of this week, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run this show without them. They're the reason why I've got access to this fancy software used to make these videos. So again, thank you so much to all of them. If you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated, but that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.